If you're afraid of doing something today, I've been there many times. I'll share an example. A few years ago, my family got a trampoline, and for some reason, something I had always been afraid of doing was flips, but more specifically, a backflip. After having the trampoline for a couple months, I had eventually learned how to do a front flip, but only being able to do one trick was getting kind of boring, and I found myself kind of wanting to learn to do a backflip, but I was super afraid of it. But I also knew God was telling me that I could do it. So one day I decided I was gonna learn, and I remember thinking that day, this is one of the scariest things I've ever done. Like, I was so scared, but I knew God was telling me I could do it, and so I went for it. And after a few tries, I landed one and I was able to do it. And this is just a small example of something that's probably not that big of a deal to most people. But when thinking back on that, I'm reminded of a quote from Nelson Mandela that says, "I learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." And what does the Bible say in Romans 8:37? That we are more than conquerors through whom loves us. And that includes conquering fear. And something I've learned in my life with overcoming fear is that courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. Courage is just the willingness to do something in spite of the fear. God says so many times in the Bible to not be afraid, but I love that he doesn't just tell us to not be afraid and then not give us any reason. He tells us to not be afraid because he's with us. As Joshua 1:9 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." But what if what you're afraid of happens? Well, God will still be with you, and you know that God is still for you, and you also know that God works everything out for your good. But what I found in my life whenever I'm afraid of doing something, if God tells me that I can do it, he means it, and he almost all the time does not let what I'm afraid of happen. And if what I'm afraid of does happen, it's usually not that bad, and it's nothing that I can't handle, and it ultimately leads to me actually accomplishing what I was afraid of. And to use another flip example, a couple years ago I was at a pool with a high dive, and I had never jumped off of a high dive before, so of course I got peer pressured into doing a front flip off of it. And I wouldn't have tried it if I didn't feel like God was telling me that I could do it, but once again I felt like God was telling me that I could do it. And so even though I was afraid to do it, I decided to try to do a front flip off of the high dive. And let me tell you, the first couple times, what I was afraid of happened. I'm talking landing directly on my face and on my back. I was definitely feeling the pain. I was looking like Patrick Star out there, but I wasn't going to give up. And you know what? I actually wasn't afraid anymore, because what I was afraid of had already happened, and it wasn't that bad. And so I went up there, I tried again, and I successfully did a front flip off of the high dive and landed not on my face. And so I found then that even if what I was afraid of happened, in that case, it wasn't that bad, and it ultimately led to me still accomplishing the task that I was afraid to do. And so I encourage you today, if you have something that you're afraid of doing, but you know that God is telling you to do it, I encourage you, have courage and do it. God will be with you and you won't regret it. I hope this helps and encourages you today. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Jordan. Follow for more Christian content.